What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It is Friday, and that means it's time for another top 5 things to watch for video. This time, New York Giants versus Minnesota Vikings. That'll be kicking off 1 o'clock Eastern time this coming Sunday. And as always, I'm just here to break down the top 5 things that I'm going to be watching for in this ball game. Number 5, pressure on Kirk Cousins. We've shown glimpses of being a very good pass rushing team in the weeks prior to this ball game. Most of the production obviously has come from our pass rushing linebackers rather than our defensive line, but this week it is vital that we get that production from the defensive line. Now, obviously a goal every single week is to get to the quarterback regardless of who it is, but this week in particular with Kirk Cousins, we need to make it a point to make sure we get to him. He's not a guy that's going to take deep risks downfield, throw the ball up, and let his receiver catch it. He is a very conservative, very cautious quarterback who, rather than taking a risk, if he has someone in his face, he's going to dump that ball off quick to his nearest receiver. As Giants fans, we know about that all too well, and that is exactly Kirk Cousins' game. With that being said, that is why it is so important that we get pressure from our D-line so we can keep linebackers in coverage. The last thing you want is for Cousins to have pressure in his face from the linebackers, dump the pass off to Dalvin Cook 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and because we don't have enough men in coverage, he's able to gain significant yardage. So our D-line needs to step it up this week, and if there was an offensive line to step it up against, it is Minnesota. Minnesota consistently has shown how poor their offensive line is. Early on this season, they're tops in the league as far as pressure allowed against their quarterback. They're allowing pressure on 33.3% of plays thus far this season. All you have to do is look as recent as their last game against the Chicago Bears. The Bears put pressure on Kirk Cousins and he completely collapsed. Chicago was able to wrap him up for 6 total sacks, limiting him to only 233 total passing yards and 0 touchdowns. Now, that's of course Chicago, and we're the Giants. Big difference in the talent on defense, of course, but still the pressure should remain the same. The game should remain the same. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to put constant pressure on Kirk Cousins and limit him in what he can do and where he can throw the ball. Outside of a single pass of 39 yards to Stephon Diggs, there was not one other completion beyond 16 yards in this ball game. Total for the ball game, Kirk Cousins attempted 36 passes, completed 27 of those. I mean, that sounds like good numbers, but when you're only averaging 4.3 yards per pass, that's just not moving the ball very effectively. And of those 27 completions, 12 of them were either to a running back or a fullback. So it's clear when pressure is in his face, those are the men that he's looking for. This week, absolutely going to be watching to see if we're able to disrupt Kirk Cousins' game plan, much like Chicago did. I'm looking for big games once again out of Marcus Golden, hopefully a breakout game this season for Lorenzo Carter. But as I said, I'm more so focused on that D-line. I want to see big numbers from Dalvin Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence, and BJ Hill. I've been asking for it all season. This is exactly the offensive line that I can see them getting it done against. Number 4, rebound for Danny Dimes. By no means was his performance last week dreadful, but it was a far cry from his breakout debut starting performance the week prior. Now, very strange considering Jones was arguably protected better against Washington than against Tampa Bay. Of course, Tampa Bay, he was sacked a total of 5 times, and then against Washington, he wasn't sacked once. Obviously, there was a lot of Danny Dimes magic going on with escaping the pocket and running downfield, using his legs, but still, it remains the same. I mean, Tampa Bay clearly has shown that they have a far superior defense compared to Washington. Jones's struggles, of course, were when he was trying to throw the ball deep downfield. He was intercepted twice and nearly for a 3rd time, and coming into this week, this test does not get any easier. As the Minnesota Vikings have legitimately one of the best overall defenses in the league, and without question, the best secondary Daniel Jones has faced in his young career to this point. Currently, Minnesota's pass defense is ranked 9th in the league, only allowing 218.5 yards per game. Both of their safeties are, without question, tops in the league. First, obviously, a very diverse player, Harrison Smith. Of course, a veteran at this point in his career, but still having yet another great season. He's very diverse, whereas he's a hard-hitting, run-stopping, play in the box type of safety, but when in coverage, he is not hampered whatsoever. This season already, he has 4 pass deflections, 1 interception, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. On the other side, Harrison's counterpart, Anthony Harris, is off to a great start this season as well. He already has 2 interceptions, but with Minnesota, the safeties aren't the only thing that you have to watch out for, as they have very dangerous corners as well. As always, Minnesota's leading corner, their CB1, if you will, is Xavier Rhodes, who even at 29 years old is still one of the more dominant corners in the league. Both physically coming up and hitting you and in coverage as well. So now for Jones, his ability on offense not only rests in his hands, but also rests in the hands of someone else who potentially could be returning to football this week. And that leads me right into number 3, the status of Saquon Barkley. If Saquon Barkley somehow makes his return in week 5 against the Vikings, it will legitimately go down as one of the most incredible medical marvels of all time. As of right now, today, Friday, it has only been 12 days since Saquon Barkley sustained that injury. For the average player, a high ankle sprain is anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. If it requires surgery, maybe longer. And Barkley's looking to come back in just 2 weeks. Just days after the injury, Barkley was already seen walking without a walking boot, which was shocking enough and was giving Giants fans hope, but we had no idea what we were in store for. Just a week after the injury, Barkley was seen here running, cutting, participating in practice. This is absolutely incredible. Barkley at times on the field has made us question whether or not he's human. This recovery from an injury like this has simply proven that he is legitimately superhuman. But now the real question is he really up for a full-fledged NFL football game? Because there is a huge difference between participating and running in practice and being out on the field and actually running the ball and taking hits. It goes without saying, even with Daniel Jones, and no matter if we trade for a wide receiver, draft a wide receiver, Saquon Barkley is the centerpiece and the most important part of our offense and our offense in the future. Now, do I want to believe that this season we are a playoff team? Of course I do. As a fan, I want nothing more than to make the playoffs. But at the end of the day, we're still missing a lot of pieces that are needed to make a huge playoff run. With that being said, my only hope is Saquon Barkley is legitimately 100% healthy from this injury. The last thing I want is for him to rush out and come back too soon. Yes, we're 2-2. We're right in the thick of things. We're in the hunt. But you have to look towards the future. Very similar to the Redskins, the Vikings have a good defense, but a struggling offense. So personally, this is worrisome as a Giants fan, putting him out there at anything less than 100%. Now, in my opinion, our offense is kind of rolling right now. We looked very good against Washington. Of course, Minnesota is a different animal, but we showed that we can move the ball without Saquon Barkley. Again, do I want him on the field? Yes, but not if it's going to impede his recovery. If he's not 100% now, the last thing I want is for him to go out there, aggravate an existing injury, and be out even longer than expected. In my opinion, is Minnesota a very good defensive team? Yes, and I'm going to get to that later on in the video as well. But we have shown we're able to move the football without Barkley. Our defense is looking more capable than it has at any other point in this season thus far. So personally, I believe we should give Saquon a little extra time and have him come back for the Patriots game this Thursday. Obviously, it's going to be a short week, so if he does play Sunday and he does get a little banged up, or maybe he wasn't full gear, full 100% ready to go, he only has 4 days or 5 days to get ready for the Patriots. So I'd rather give him that extra day, or that extra week, and just let him go out Thursday against the Patriots in prime time. But hey, if he's 100%, that thing has miraculously healed. Those tree trunk legs of his have protected his ankle, protected his legs, protected those bones, and I'd love to see him on the field, of course. I mean, he sets up the pass better than anyone else in the league. No running back is more worrisome than Saquon Barkley in the backfield, so he would only help if he's on the field. Again, I just hope it doesn't aggravate an existing injury and keep him out longer than expected. Number 2, can the defense take advantage of a frustrated passing offense? It's not often in the past few years that you hear controversial headlines coming out of Minnesota. But this past week, that's all but what the NFL world has been talking about. Between trade rumors and frustrated teammates, that's dominated the top headlines thus far this year. For starters, coming out of Minnesota's game last week against the Bears, Adam Thielen, arguably one of the best wide receivers in the league, had nothing but displeasure on his mind when asked about the ball game. He said the offense was not moving the ball effectively, and he put all of the blame on his quarterback and was visibly frustrated. Later on in the week, all it took was one emoji tweet from Stefon Diggs to stir up even more drama in Minnesota, and had a lot of people questioning whether or not he wanted to be a Viking at all. Now, if a player truly wanted to be on a team and maybe his comments, or in this case an emoji, was taken out of context, you would expect him to clarify next time he has a chance with the media. Diggs did not. When asked if there was any truth, or any truth behind him wanting out of Minnesota or wanting to be traded, Diggs had this to say.
So you do want to be traded?
I say that?
Well, you said
I said it's truth to all rumors.
So obviously with a statement like that, the reporters ran with it. I mean, everywhere you look, there's an article about Stefon Diggs wanting out of Minnesota, speculation on where he could potentially go, and heck, I was even in on it. I made a full video on a potential trade, my thoughts on a potential trade for Stefon Diggs. Obviously, I'm not really all for it. If you watch the video, you know that. But that's just how crazy this world is. One emoji, one tweet, and boom, everything goes nuts. Well, now this poses the question as to whether or not Thielen and Diggs are justified in their comments and their beliefs. And if we take a look at the stats, they might be. Kirk Cousins this season currently is 64 for 99, which is a pretty good completion rate. But looking deeper, he only has 735 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So now, just to show how poor that is, for comparison, Daniel Jones, who of course missed the first 2 games of the season, got in for a small amount of time against Dallas, but legitimately took over after 2 games, has the same amount of touchdowns, only 15 less pass completions, and most of all, only 157 less passing yards. Obviously, if a quarterback is struggling, so are his receivers. And if we take a look at the stats here that they actually put up on Good Morning Football, you can see the struggles. Now, this is a gross underproduction and underutilization of top-tier talent, but it doesn't just stop at the wide receivers. Tight end Kyle Rudolph has always been a sure set of hands, a safety blanket, if you will, for whoever was the quarterback for the Vikings. Even looking to last season, where his numbers were maybe not excelling in the league, but still very capable. Looking at his stats through the first 4 games of this season, though, significant decrease in production. He's on pace for statistically his worst season of his career. currently only having 5 catches through the first 4 games. Simple math there. He is on pace for 20 catches, and for the whole season, 128 yards. Now, you may be thinking the drafting of Irv Smith Jr., the young tight end, may have taken away from some of the production for Kyle Rudolph, but that's simply not the case. Even Irv Smith Jr. only has 5 catches thus far for 64 yards. That's dreadful, especially for a guy that likes to dink and dunk. How are you not utilizing these guys? Obviously, the Giants' struggles against tight ends is well documented at this point. So I'm definitely going to be watching to see if Minnesota changes their offense and utilizes these tight ends in a better fashion against the Giants. But more importantly than that, I am absolutely going to be watching to see how these wide receivers react in this ballgame. What is their body language? Will the frustration continue, or will Minnesota finally prove to the league that there's no problem? It's just been a bad start to the season, and they still have one of the better offenses in football. And number 1, contain Dalvin Cook. Cook, coming off a very serious ACL injury in 2017, was looking for a big bounce back year in 2018, but unfortunately he did miss a lot of time because of a hamstring injury. But it finally looks like here in 2019, Dalvin Cook is breaking out as one of the best running backs in football. He's had an exceptional start to the season. Thus far, on 71 rush attempts, has 410 yards, 5.8 yards per carry. That's incredible. And he's tacked on 5 rushing touchdowns to boot. He's looking like tops in the league at this point. Prior to our secondary finally showing some signs of life last week against Washington, really the only thing our defense had going for them was containing the run and limiting what running backs can do against us. Currently, we are tied for 10th in the league, only allowing 3.9 yards per carry. Although Cook's stats look great overall, he is coming off of one of his worst performances of the season, only carrying the ball for 35 total yards, averaging 2.5 yards per carry. But of course, as I've already mentioned, that was against one of the scariest defenses in football. The Bears are absolutely no joke, so I do not expect them to change their game plan or anything of the sort coming into this week against us. Beyond just the pass rush, I'm expecting a lot from a guy like Dexter Lawrence. I want him to use his big build to clog up those rushing lanes and contain Dalvin Cook. Make him bounce it out and have our linebackers clean it up. It seems strange for us to, especially because of the weeks prior, to want a team to pass the ball, to stop the run so they pass. But with the lack of production that I did mention of Kirk Cousins, that's exactly what we want to do. Outside of Ezekiel Elliott, which of course could have been a fluke performance just because days prior he was hanging out in Cabo, Dalvin Cook is legitimately the best running back that we have faced to this point this season. If we have any shot of improving to 3-2 and being over 500 for the first time since I can remember, we need to contain his production and limit him in what he's able to do. That's exactly why the number 1 thing in my top 5 things to watch for this week is just that, containing Dalvin Cook. But that's all I got for you guys today. That is my top 5 things to watch for video, top 5 Fridays. As always, be on the lookout tomorrow for a full game preview and predictions of Giants versus Vikings. And then, of course, Sunday night, be on the lookout for that full game review, my reactions to what happened in the ball game. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it and sub to the channel if you haven't already. We're growing, guys. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, I was right around 100 subscribers. We're already up to 232 last time I checked. So thank you guys so much for the support. I want to see this channel continue to grow, and I have you guys to thank. But until next time, I'll see you in the next one, guys.